Hi, my name is Terry, and you're watching Terry Tells the Story. Before he was born a Roman triumvir, Mark Antony was a soldier. He knew the smell of iron, leather, and sweat. But in 41 BC, on a barge in Cilicia, he was introduced to a weapon he didn't know how to fight. Cleopatra didn't just meet him, she submerged him. She spent a talent of gold, about $1 million in today's money, just to floor her banquet hall knee-deep in a very specific, very dangerous flower. This isn't just a rose. This is the Damask Rose. And today, we're going to be talking about why this single plant has been the silent architect of empires, the coded language of forbidden love, and the only scent that survived the fall of the classical world. To understand the power, we have to understand the specimen, Rosa damascena. It isn't a natural occurrence, it is an ancient hybrid. Genetic testing shows us it is a cross between Rosa gallica, the French rose, and Rosa moscata, the musk rose. It was born in the foothills of the Alborz Mountains in Central Asia, not Damascus, though it took that name later when the Crusaders saw it growing in the gardens of the Levant and brought it to Europe in the 13th century. It is a deciduous shrub, growing up to 2.2 meters, or, for my American viewers, about 7 feet tall. Its stems are densely armed with stout, curved prickles and stiff bristles. But the prize is the bloom. Unlike the sterile, scentless roses you find at a grocery store, the damask is a multiflora. It blooms in clusters of delicate tissue paper petals ranging from shell pink to deep carmine. It is a creature of the heights. It loves temperate climates with cool nights and sunny days, specifically between 300 and 1,500 meters above sea level. If you want its best oil, it needs to be harvested by hand between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. before the sun evaporates the volatile compounds from its petals. It is the source of Rose Absolute and Rose Otto. It takes 4,000 kilograms of petals, that's 4 tons, to produce just 1 kilogram of essential oil. This is why it has always been a symbol of the elite. If you smelled like a damask in the ancient world, you weren't just clean, you were untouchable. But the power of the damask isn't restricted to the air. These petals are entirely edible, often dried and steeped into potent teas or ground into preserves. When consumed, the rose acts as a direct internal aphrodisiac, warming the body and relaxing the nervous system from the inside out. Cleopatra needed Rome's military, but she couldn't afford to look like a beggar. She needed to look like a goddess who controlled the very air Antony breathed. When she set sail for Tarsus, she ordered her servants to soak the massive purple sails of her royal galley in gallons of damask rose oil. The heat of the Mediterranean sun baked that oil into the fabric, creating a scented wake that drifted miles ahead of the ship. People standing on the docks of the Cilicia smelled a floral paradise before they could even see the hull of the ship in the horizon. When Antony finally stepped onto that barge, he found a hall where the floor disappeared. Cleopatra had covered the entire deck with a fine silk net, and underneath that net, she had packed rose petals 2 feet deep. Every time Antony took a step, the weight of his boots crushed the blooms, releasing phenylethanol, that natural aphrodisiac, straight into his bloodstream. He sat there for 4 days, wading through a sea of pink, breathing in a chemical cocktail that lowered his cortisol and spiked his dopamine. By the time they reached Alexandria, the negotiation was over. He didn't just sign an alliance, he surrendered his life to her. Tethered to the scent of a woman who knew exactly how to hijack a general's biology. A century later, the Emperor Nero decided to prove he didn't just use nature, he dominated it. In the dining room of his Domus Aurea, he installed a mechanical revolving ceiling made of carved ivory panels. He wanted his guests to feel like they were dining under the heavens. During the peak of the feast, as the wine flowed, the ivory panels would begin to rotate and slide open. Instead of rain or light, an avalanche of damask petals would pour down. But Nero's hospitality had a body count. At one dinner, the servants opened the chutes and didn't stop. The petals fell so fast and in such a massive volume that the guests reclining on the low couches couldn't get up. They were pinned down by the sheer mass of the flowers. They gasped for air. They drew in the heavy scent of the damask until their lungs gave out. They died in the most beautiful, expensive way possible, buried alive under the emperor's wealth. Because the damask was so prized, it became the Roman symbol for total, absolute secrecy. They would hang a single rose from the marble ceiling of their council chambers. To speak sub rosa, under the rose, was a binding legal social contract. If you were at a banquet and that flower was above you, the space became a sanctuary. You could plot a rebellion, confess a forbidden love, or negotiate a black market trade, and it was understood that no word would ever leave the room. To betray a secret told sub rosa was to invite a social execution. The rose was the only thing standing between the elite's private desires and the harsh public laws of the Republic. When the Roman Empire collapsed and Europe forgot how to even make glass, the secret of the damask lived on in the East. In the 10th century, the Persian polymath Avicenna saw the rose not just as a perfume, but as a masterpiece of chemistry. He refined the process of steam distillation, creating the first pure rose water. While the West was treating diseases with superstition, the scholars of the Islamic Golden Age were using the damask to treat heart palpitations and deep psychological trauma. They built massive rose distilleries in Shiraz and Isfahan, preserving the high-tech extraction methods that would eventually form the foundation of modern pharmacy. When the Crusaders stumbled into these gardens 300 years later, they realized they were looking at a civilization that was centuries ahead of them in science, all built on the back of a single flower. In the 17th century, King Louis XIV's brother, Philippe I, Duke of Orleans, turned the French court into a playground. He was a fierce soldier who wore jewelry, ribbons, and a heavy shroud of damask oil. In a court where every look was surveyed, the rose became a survival code for the gay community. The Mughetto, the perfumed men, used the rose to identify one another in the halls of Versailles. If you handed someone a damask with the thorns stripped away, you were saying you were ready for a secret love. If the rose was offered with the leaves, you were warning them to be cautious. It was a topographical map of desire hidden in plain sight. They lived their lives in the open, protected by a floral language that the traditional world was too blind to translate. So, the next time you see a rose, it might not be just a grocery store prop. It could be the scent of $1 million seduction and a Roman execution. So, the Spanish I'm going to be teaching you today is La Rosa de Damasco. La Rosa de Damasco. And what that means is the Damask Rose. If you liked this video or you learned something new, drop a like down below. If you have a specific topic that you'd like to see me cover, drop me a comment. And if you'd like to support this work that I do, there'll be a link to the Cashapp in the description box below. We'll see you next time.